Hello everybody. Today I'm going to share a walkthrough of the Druid 1.5 Everquest in Everquest. My Druid recently completed it and I thought I would share my experience with everyone. And the walkthrough video I'm about to show is a 105 level Druid with some group gear and some heroic gear still. Maybe 4,000 AAs. Nothing too spectacular. I was able to solo the entire thing. I brought a mercenary along just in case there was any rough spots. And remember, when you start out this quest, you need to have either the Epic 1.0 done or completed the pre-quest. You may want to skill up your abilities in pottery, brewing, tailoring, and fishing before you start this quest. I would recommend getting fishing, pottery, brewing, and tailoring to 100. And one last thing, have good foraging skills, because you'll need to do a lot of foraging in this quest. Okay, for the very first step, you'll want to go to East Karana and find a mob named Elthiel. She is located at -360, -1600. Now simply follow the dialogue, which should just be the phrase, "How is it out of balance?" with a question mark. The next step is to go to the Wraith Mountains and forage until you find some sickly maiden's hair. This step took me about half an hour of just foraging anywhere in the zone. Some people have found success in the Druid Ring. That's actually where I foraged mine. Okay, so after you have foraged the sickly maiden's hair, take it back to Elthiel in East Karana. And after you hand it to her, she'll give you back a tuft of sickly's maiden's hair. And you'll need to port to Surefall Glades and hand that to an NPC named Neria Farbreeze. And this part is easy because you should be able to port right there because druids have a spell that takes them right to Surefall Glades. Neria's location is right outside the door from where you port in, to the right. She'll be standing by a little pond. Just use tracking to find her, you should locate her almost immediately. Now when you hand her the tuft of Sickly's Maiden's hair, she'll hand you back a 4-slot small container called the Waterproof Collection Bag. So now what you want to do is head to the Lake of Ill Omen. 3 mobs called a Bloodgill Forager will spawn. Their location will be near the Vexar Zone, but it's underneath the rocky area where the entrance is. I didn't even know it existed until I did this quest. So one of them, after you defeat them, one of them drops a handful of diseased maiden's hair. You'll need to loot that, and then go on to the next step. Okay, so the next step takes place in Frontier Mountains, and that's a zone directly across from Lake of Ill Omen. And you're going to need to complete a quest called Goblin Hide and Seek. And to start this, you'll need to talk to an NPC named Finrin Chelister. He's in a small ruined building at -2210, +1480. And you just go through his dialogue. And what he wants you to do is create a goblin disguise to start the event. And the first thing I did was I became a master in the goblin language. You'll need that as part of the event. And you either find a friend or a guildmate that can help you master that to 100, or if you have any training points, you can just go to your nearest druid guildmaster and train in them that way. So be sure to finish the dialogue with Finrin Chelister before starting the rest of this quest, because there's probably some kind of hidden flag that requires you to go through the dialogue. And I'm not sure about that, but you're better safe than sorry. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to the Emerald Jungle and forage emerald leaves as your very, very first step. And remember, you can port there just by using the Kunark spell, Wind of the South. You can port right to the Emerald Jungle. I found that this was a little bit time consuming. Maybe it took 15 minutes to forage. Okay, so you'll want to go to North Row as your next step and forage cactus pulp. And this was easy for me. I think I got it on the very first forage attempt when I zoned into North Row. So, after you have your emerald leaves and you have your cactus pulp, you'll want to get some lichen clover. And I found that in the Field of Bone. Just take the Plane of Knowledge stone and just start foraging when you get in the zone. So once you have all three of these items, you'll need to brew them with a water flask. It'll be the emerald leaves, cactus pulp, lichen clover, and a water flask in a brew barrel. Trivial is 15, minimum skill required is 60, but just to be on the safe side, I'd go up to like a skill of 100. And once you combine the items, you'll get an item called green body paint, and that will be the item you need in your next step. So now that you have the green body paint, you'll need a few other items from the Temple of Draga. They also drop in Frontier Mountains, but I found more success just going into Draga and defeating enemies there. And I'm talking about the classic zones, the classic Kunark zones, not the new expansion versions of Draga and Frontier Mountains. Stick to the old one. And the items you're looking for drop from any mob in the zone. I found a lot of success down by the King area. And what you'll need are 2 copper armbands, 1 carved wooden mask, 1 goblin loincloth, and 1 green goblin skin. So what you'll need to do is tailor the green body paint along with the 2 copper armbands, the 1 carved wooden mask, the goblin loincloth, and the green goblin skin. Tailor them to create a poor goblin disguise. The trivial is 15, but just on the safe side, be sure to have a good tailoring skill to create this item. And now you should be ready to start the Goblin Hide and Seek event in Frontier Mountains. Okay, now that you have the poor Goblin disguise created, you'll have to go back to the Temple of Draga entrance in Frontier Mountains. Remember, you're just outside the entrance to Draga, you're not actually in Draga. This will take place in Frontier Mountains right at the entrance. And what you need to do is at 7 p.m. game time, you'll need to click on the poor Goblin disguise, and you'll have to say in Goblin, start the contest. It's very important you set your language to Goblin when you say it. And what worked for me is kind of staying back a little bit from the entrance and I targeted the nearest Goblin, clicked off my invis, and then I set it. If everything works correctly, you'll see a zone-wide emote, something about the King Owen contest. And one thing I remembered about this quest is how slow it goes. So I saw the zone-wide emote, and nothing started to actually happen for about 2 or 3 minutes. So be patient. As long as you see the zone-wide emote, everything should be working correctly. So after a lot of back and forth between the goblins, eventually a bunch of goblin seekers will spawn. And during that time, a goblin hider will spawn somewhere in the zone. And what I did was simply use tracking and found the goblin hider. And after defeating him, loot a bag of diseased maiden's hair. That's really how easy it was for me. But apparently, I guess different hiders can spawn, unless I had just had some luck with the very first hider that I defeated. Multiple hiders might spawn. But just keep defeating them until you loot the diseased maiden's hair. And what I did, I just zoned out as soon as I got the item. I didn't finish the event. Okay, the next step will be to go to Cobalt Scar and speak with Blum Blum Swigwater. And be sure to complete the dialogue with him. I'll post the dialogue phrases up on the screen, and then you're ready to move on to your next step. Okay, the next step is to go to Eastern Wastes and find a mob called the Ulthorc Raider. He'll spawn in the southwestern corner of the zone, along with 2 other Ulthorc man-of-wars. It'll take a while for him to spawn, so you might be waiting around for like 15 minutes. Be sure to have tracking up and just keep looking for him. And once you defeat him, he'll drop an item called the Carved Prexus Totem. And what you'll need to do is take that back to Blum Blum and Cobalt Scar. And once you hand it to Blum Blum, he'll give you a small triggerfish. And one thing I noticed with this part of the quest is the small triggerfish took a while to spawn on my cursor. I don't know if it was a server issue, just being slow, or if that's how it normally goes, but just be aware that some of these items may not spawn right away. So after he gives you the small triggerfish, type in what rumors with a question mark, and you're ready to move on to the next step. The next step is to go to the Abyssal Sea and buy a gutting knife from Tassig Drig. Combine the small triggerfish and the gutting knife in a tackle box to craft Soggy Maiden's Hair. It's a trivial of 20 in fishing, and you must have at least a 20 skill to attempt it. And I found the hardest part with this step was just locating the NPC that I needed. Some places that are crowded, like the Abyssal Sea, find helps, using the find button, or tracking helps too. So the next step is to go to the Firat and find Bouncer Flurb. He'll be wandering between the Wraith Mountain zone line and a gook. I found him near a bridge, kind of near the Wraith Mountain zone line. The write-up will tell you to be in wolf form, but that didn't work for me. I just hailed him while he was aggroing me, and he gave me the alligator scales, which is the next item you need. And it looks like he'll start attacking you if he hasn't yet already. You don't need to defeat him, just zone out, as long as you have the alligator scales. Okay, now go back to Surefall Glades and give the alligator scales to Neria, and in return she'll give you the cleansed alligator scales. And you need to go through the dialogue with her. And in this step you'll have to craft a charm. So the two items you'll need are piranha meat and a clump of refined Telosian clay. The piranha meat drops from a green blood piranha in Kazakh Thule, so you'll have to zone there and defeat the green blood piranhas until one drops. I found this a very easy step. Now for the chunk of broken Telosian stoneworker, the item can drop in multiple zones, but I just went to Barindu and just start defeating all the stone looking guys, and they'll eventually drop one. It took me maybe 20 minutes to get one, so I would just recommend going to Barindu for this step. Okay, for the next step you're going to need to convert that chunk of broken Telosian stoneworker into 2 clumps of refined Telosian clay. You'll only need one though. And there is an NPC in the Abyssal Sea that will do the conversion for you. All you have to do is hand it to him. And that NPC is named Malkadev U. Yakunas. And he's located down by the pottery supplies. You can either track him or use find to find him as well. Okay, so now you'll need to craft the item that you need, the charm. And the way you do that is combining 1 clump of refined Telosian clay, 1 cleaned alligator scale, 1 piranha meat, and 1 water flask in a kiln to create the charm. And it looks like the minimum skill required to attempt this is 100 in pottery. So the next step is a little strange, but what you do is you head back to the Firat with your new charm in the charm slot, and you have to cast Befriend Animal on a swamp alligator there. And you should just be able to look in the water near the Kazakh Thule zone line. I found the alligator I needed underneath the bridge, near the water line, near the Kazakh Thule zone in. So you'll need to cast Befriend Animal and charm the alligator to follow you, and you need to lead the alligator near the Kazakh Thule entrance, right near the Broken Pillar Bridge. And if you do this step correctly, eventually you'll see an emote about the alligator going into shock, and he disappears. And a little while after he disappears, an NPC named a Swamp Terror will spawn nearby, and he'll immediately attack. Once he's dispatched, he'll drop 2 items that you'll need: a partially digested maiden's hair and a mangled head. And the one thing I remember from this encounter was the amount of time that it took a Swamp Terror to actually spawn and for me to find him. It took a little while longer than I expected, but the fight was really easy if you're level 105. Okay, the next step is to combine the handful of diseased maiden's hair, bag of diseased maiden's hair, soggy maiden's hair, and partially digested maiden's hair in the waterproof collection bag, and that crafts a sealed collection bag. You'll need to give this to Neria in Surefall Glades. And in return, she'll give you a washcloth, and that's a 1-slot medium container. and you combine the mangled head and the washcloth to craft a wrapped mangled head, and you give this back to Neria. In return, you'll receive a mangled head, this time a 2-slot medium container. The next step is going to Plane of Knowledge and finding an NPC named Grave Lady Bedia. And be sure to go through her dialogue, and after you finish the dialogue, head to Pathfinder Airlet in the library. And go through her dialogue as well, and when you say the phrase, "Is it worth it?" you'll receive 3 books. And when you receive the 3 books, go back to Grave Lady Bedia and hand them to her. She won't say anything, but she'll give you a book called Healin' Plants. And you'll need to take the book back to Surefall Glades and hand them to Neria. And in return, you'll receive Neria's healing notes. Okay, so the next step is to go to East Freeport and find Soulbinder Grunson and go through his dialogue. And after you say the phrase, "What one?" with a question mark, you'll need to find Caskin Marshhart, and he's in the Bard Guild Hall in East Freeport. And go through his dialogue until you say the phrase "mad" with a question mark. And you'll need to head to North Row next to find a madman. And the madman you're looking for will con indifferent. And he's easy to find if you just use tracking. And I believe he stopped for me when I said the word Gaiden. And you'll need to go through the dialogue with him. I'll put the phrases you need up on the screen. And once you go through the dialogue with him, a few mobs are going to spawn next to him. And I believe there are 4 mobs that spawn that you'll need to defeat. And once all of them are defeated, the madman will depop and repop, and you'll need to follow his dialogue, and eventually he'll give you a soul stone. And one thing I remember about this step in the quest is that he didn't depop right away, and he started walking away after the mobs were defeated. I had to follow him, and eventually he stopped, and he repopped and gave me the item that I needed. I was almost worried that I had messed up this step. So once he gives you the item, he'll gate. Okay, for the next step, you'll need to go to Toxilia Forest near the Painel entrance. And you should see 2 skeletons near the entrance that are, they're both holding pickaxes. And in this step of the quest, you'll need to do like a mini quest, kind of like in Frontier Mountains. So the way it works is every once in a while, an NPC called the Animated Heretic Pet walks by the 2 skeletons and stops. And after going through a little bit of dialogue, the Heretic Pet poofs, and it's your turn to start the quest. And you'll need to target the right-hand skeleton when facing the panel entrance and start the dialogue. And I'll post the dialogue phrases up on the screen. And for this part, I recommend making a hot button that says "Yo ho, no sun," and the second line that says "The skeleton's day is never done." And you'll have to type this in correctly. Make sure that you type it in just like the skeleton says it, exactly as the skeleton says it. Okay, if you've done this correctly, he'll hand you the worthless mining pick, and you equip it, and you head around the area. You don't have to go too far, just stay in like a little circle area near the entrance to Peniel. Don't go outside at all, and you'll need to start spamming the song that the skeleton told you to sing. And you'll see an emote that says your voice echoes nicely from the walls. And what worked for me is targeting myself and then saying the phrase, singing the song. And it's then when I saw the emote that came from the walls, and apparently that means that the invisible mob is listening. So keep doing that until you see the abandoned heretic pet come back, and you target him and say, "I am on the job." And if you do it correctly, he'll say something about a druid that wants to be a miner. He'll say that phrase, and he'll walk off again. And that means you're doing it correctly. And I think he'll come back and do that 2 or 3 times. At least he did for me. Just keep saying that same phrase when he comes back, and he disappears, and he'll come back, and all the while keep spamming the song and making sure that the invisible mob gives you the voice echoes from the walls emote. And eventually a skeleton will come back and say something and then hand you the item you need on your cursor. And that item is animated heads. And one last thing, because I did this step actually quite a few times. Be careful how far back you go when you're singing the song, because you don't want to go to the zone in to Peniel. It's right next to where you'll be, so don't walk too far backwards. And also, like I said, targeting myself helped a lot to get the emote about the echo. And for me, this was probably the most complicated part of the quest, so after this, it's relatively easy. So the next step is to head back to the Furat, and you just go where the swamp terror spawned in the step before, and you combine the soul stone and animated heads in the mangled head container. If you need a specific spot, negative 375, negative 155 should help. So when you do the combine, a compelled spirit will start screaming, and then you just go through the dialogue with him, and I will post the dialogue phrases on the screen. So you should receive a disease rune, and you combine the disease rune with the animated heads in the mangled head to craft a rune skull. Now you go through more dialogue until you say the phrase, "Who is Bohab?" And if you say that, you're on to your next step. Okay, so the next step is to head back to Surefall Glades, and you hand the rune skull and Neria's healing notes to Neria Farbreeze. In return, she'll give you Neria's research notes, and now you need to head to Plane of Justice. So in the Plane of Justice, you need to find an NPC named the Great Bear. And for me, tracking worked okay. If you need specifics, he should be at 500, negative 500. And you'll need to have some form of charm animals loaded. I used the highest level one I could. And once you charm him, hail him, and go through the dialogue. Your dialogue phrase will be, "What about the tribe of the dawn?" And after that, he should give you a red dogwood seed and a living bramble seed. And then he leaves. Okay, so now you need to go back to Surefall Glades and give both seeds to Neria. And in return, she will give you a living bramble seed and a mind crystal. And again, one strange thing about this part of the quest is how long it took for the mind crystal to pop on my cursor. I don't know if that was some kind of server issue again, or if that's just how slow it really goes. Okay, the next step is to go to South Quinos and look for an NPC named a Furtive figure. He spawns in the Lion's Mane Inn, in the room in a hallway behind the counter, first door on the right. You can just use tracking to find him as well. And after you dispatch him, he'll drop a hasty notes, and I recommend reading it just in case it triggers some kind of invisible flag. So once you do that, you're ready to move on to the next step. Okay, for the next step, you need to go to southern Karana. The exact location is negative 640, negative 3305, or you can look on the map that I have up on the screen. And for this step, you'll need to defeat 3 NPCs that will spawn at midnight, game time. And there will be a total of 5 NPCs that spawn. 2 you can't target, and 3 you can. The 3 you can target, defeat those guys. I won't try to pronounce their names because they're very complicated. And after you defeat the 3 that you can target, they each drop a crystal that you'll need to loot. Well, a crystal fragment. And you'll need to take all 3 of them to West Freeport and an NPC named Shana Liskia. She is the Enchanter Guildmaster. So after handing all 3 crystal fragments to Shanaliskia in West Freeport, she'll give you back the 3 crystal fragments and a small padded 6-slot tiny container. Okay, the next step is to go to Harbinger Spire, and you'll need to defeat 2 mobs that spawn in that zone. I'll show you the exact location on the map, or it should be the 3rd room down on the left from when you zone in. And there's 2 mobs that'll spawn, named Glenfire Telzir and Azabel Sparvan, and one of them drops 2 crystal fragments you need, and the other drops 1. So once you loot all 3 of the crystal fragments that drop in Harbinger Spire, combine that with the other 3 crystal fragments you have in the small padded bag to create a full padded bag. And you'll need to take that back to Shanaliskia. Okay, Shanaliskia will give you a bowl of foul-smelling liquid, and it's a 3-slot large container. And next you'll need to head to the Abyssal Sea again and find an NPC named Solana Leafdew, and she's located at -315 plus 200. Be sure to go through her dialogue and hand her the Mind Crystal, and when she hands it back, you're ready for the next step. Okay, now you'll need to go to the Emerald Jungle again and forage an Emerald Moss. After you have that foraged, head to Natimbi, and the mob you'll need to defeat there is near the Codtaz Zone Inn, right where the Codtaz Zone Inn stone is located. When you get there, there'll be 11 mobs, 10 reborns, and 1 ritual conduit. And after all the reborns have been defeated, the ritual conduit will despawn and a not juggernaut will spawn in its place. Long story short, just defeat the juggernaut and he will drop a energized knockblood that you'll need. And you'll take the energized knockblood, the emerald moss, and the mind crystal, combine them in the bowl of foul-smelling liquid to create a clear mind crystal. Looking back at it now, this step wasn't very difficult at all, but I can see for some lower levels, like maybe under 85, you may want to bring some high-level friends, at least a group of higher levels, to defeat this step. Okay, so the next step is to head back to the Abyssal Sea and give the Clear Mind Crystal to Cylindria Leafdew. So just go through the dialogue and you'll be ready for your next step. Okay, for the next step, you'll want to go to the ruined city of Dranik. And in the eastern part of the zone, in the tunnels, you'll need to walk around there until you see an emote. And the emote will say, "The ground shakes violently and a deep thudding sound rolls across the land." Once you see that emote, just use tracking and find a cracked earthshaker. If you're lower level, you may want to take some high level friends with you. And once you defeat him, he'll drop a chunk of energized clay, and you'll need that for the next step. Okay, now go back to the Abyssal Sea and make an aerated pot shell by combining 1 aerated pot sketch, 1 block of clay, 1 water flask, and a pottery wheel, trivial 68. Combine the aerated pot shell with a chunk of energized clay in a kiln to craft a reinforced aerated pot. And after you do that, you're ready for the final fight. So the final fight is in Kithakar Forest, and you'll need to defeat a mob called the Blackened Trench, and it should be up near the lake in the southeast part of the zone. And after you defeat it, 8 to 10 mini trents called Blackened Branches will spawn. They're fairly easy to defeat, nothing special. After the last of the Blackened Branches is defeated, the last mob, boss mob, will spawn. And she is called the Blackened Dryad. And she's pretty trivial for level 105. You might want to have a merc up if you're severely undergeared. Wasn't too much of a problem for me. Once she was defeated, just loot the Blackened Earth that she drops. And you combine the Blackened Earth, the Living Bramble Seed, and the Clear Mind Crystal, and the Reinforced Aerated Pot to receive your Epic 1.5. And that is the end of the quest. Alright, so that is my walkthrough of the Druid Epic 1.5 quest. I had a lot of fun completing it. It was very involved and time consuming. I give a lot of credit for the druids that have completed it back when the content was current. This truly is an epic quest. And someday in the future, I'll do a walkthrough of the Epic 2.0 and maybe even the Epic Ornament because I kind of want to wear this, show it off. So, I don't know, look for that in the future. Alright, so that's about it. Everybody have a good day. Bye.